Hello students, today will we discuss about Chaucer's art of characterization. आज का हमारा टॉपिक है चौसर का आर्ट ऑफ करेक्टराइजेशन। ये 14th सेंचुरी के थे चौसर। ओके, चौसर इज द फर्स्ट ग्रेट पेंटर of character because he is the first great observer of it among English writers. In fact, next Shakespeare, Chaucer is the greatest delineator of character in English literature. In Tell Canterbury Tales, Chaucer tried to paint faithfully the body and soul of the 14th century life. Before the Canterbury Tales, we do not know a poem of which the primary aim was to depict and display the truthful spectacle of life. It is the greatness of Chaucer that in the prologue, his 29 characters drawn from different classes of society represent the 14th century society as vividly and clearly as Pope represented early 18th century life in his poems such as The Rape of the Lock and Dunciad. In the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer's England come to life. First इसमें Chaucer as the first great delineator of character in English literature. Okay. In the prologue to Canterbury Tales, Chaucer England comes to life. We meet the knight travel stand from the war and as meek as a girl in his behavior. The squire with curly locks embroidered like a meadow full of fresh flowers, white and red. The yeoman clad in a coat and hood of green. The priors earnest to imitate the manners of high society, the jolly monk, the wanton and merry friar, the drunkard cook, the merchant, the Oxford clerk, the lawyer, the doctor, the Dartmouth sailor, the sumner, the partner, the reeve, the wife of Bath, the gentle parson, the five guildmen, the plowman, etc. Next, his artistic method. In presenting the character, Chaucer follows the method of an artist with a brush in his hand. But his method in painting the character is primitive, which no artist would adopt today. Chaucer is primitive, says Legges, aiming at exactness of features and correctness of emblem. He is primitive also via certain honest awkwardness, the unskilled stiffness of some of these outlines, and such an insistence on minute points as it first provoked a smile. Next, his characters are used as foils to others. Chaucer has shown his characters by presenting them as foils to others. The sumner and the friar, cook and municipal, the conscientious person and the unscrupulous partner are foils. In this connection, Dryden observes all his pilgrims are severally from each other, and not only in their inclinations. Baptista Poeta could not have described their natures better than by the marks the poet gives them. Even the grave and serious characters are, why there are several sorts of gravity. Next, Chaucer represents the cross section of the 14th century English society. In the below various characters comprise all sorts and conditions of men. They are so real that they can be easily recognized. The sketches are devised to provide a representation of the chief classes of English society under the higher nobility. Moreover, the sketches not only give typical traits of temperament, appearance, and manners, but incorporate the essentials of medicine, law, scholarship, religion, the theory of knighthood, and also satire on faults in social life. They summarize the noblest ideals of the time and basest practices. The result, therefore, is a conspectus of medieval English society. It would be possible to use the prologue as basis for a survey of 14th century English life. Okay, next, the Chaucer's characters are both individual and types. Chaucer's characters are both individual and types. A.C. Bard remarks, Chaucer's characters are individual as well as types, not mere phantoms of the brain, but real human beings and types, through the likeness of whole classes of men and women. The knight is a character of all ages. He is a great warrior and a conqueror who in every age stand as the guardian of men against the oppressor. But the knight has been individualized by his horse race and gentle and meek behavior. Okay. Next, the use of color in the portrayal of characters. Chaucer reveals his characters by their colors, dresses, and appearances. Splashes of color vivid the eye as we glance at various portrayals. We are captivated by the embroidered gown of the squire, the green coat and hood of the yeoman, and the priors is several characters. The Sumner had hair as yellow as wax. Chaucer has also characterized his characters by their dresses. Okay. Next, informal method in character portrayal. No small part of the realism of these portraits is their informality and their lack of regular order. We find now odd details of dress or equipments. His boots couple his horse in great estate, now habitual significant actions, and ever he rode the handrest of our route, now a significant speech. He wore the silver kept for anything. Witwise Middlework and Orwell, now a sharply round physical detail his neck white was the floor delage. Okay, next identification of most of the character as real human beings. The lifelikeness of most of the Canterbury pilgrims he has given rise to several scholarly attempts at identifying them among of Chaucer's known contemporaries. The host of the Tabard Inn, later in the Canterbury Tales, called Harry Valley, most probably pictures an actual 14th century Southwark innkeeper called Henry Bailey, and here and there are scattered throughout the portrait hints of possible actual persons. One can think of several personal features so distinctive that one feels that Chaucer's own observation noticed them somewhere in real life, but more often it is the occurrence of a name that adds lifelikeness to a portrait. The shipman hails from Dartmouth and is master of the Verge. Madeline the hails from Reeve come from Wortswell in Norfolk. The merchants' trading interests were largely concentrated in Middlebury in Holland and Orwell near Harwich. Here is God's plenty. The Pillow of Canterbury Tales present a social group of persons larger and more diversified than the gentlefolk of the Decameron, smaller and more manageable than Circambus, identically larger company. Chaucer's group of pilgrims is not representative of English society but covers well enough the main social elements. The nobility and the lowest class of laborers are excluded as they are unlikely to travel in the fashion of this group. But the knight, the learned profession, the landed gentry, the medieval manor, and the free agricultural labourers are all represented. The rising middle with foreign commerce, the five tradesmen with aldermanic ambitions, Harry Valley, solid citizen and inner keeper of Southwark, and why the London cook and municipal. From the provinces come the expert cloth weaver, Alison of Bath, and the daring skepticism of Dartmouth. The portraits of the clergy are significant for the tolerance with which Chaucer points out the foibles of the monastic order in describing the monk and the priors, greater severity in satirizing the worldliness of the prior, and his open attack on the corrupt summoner and the fraudulent pardoner. His ideal portraits of the clerk of Oxford and the parish priest, along with his equally favorable description of the knight and the plowman.